Welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. The Women of Ambition podcast is a place that explores women's ambition. First, the radical act of acknowledging it within ourselves. Second, allowing space to explore what ambition means for each of us. And third, harnessing and developing our drive. Today, we are continuing our segment on ambitious relationships by looking at ambitious motherhood with Bayla Abdurachmanov. What I really love about this discussion with Bayla is that it bridges the two different areas we're going to go in this podcast. Last episode, we talked about an ambitious relationship with self, and in the future, we're going to talk about ambitious relationships with children and spouses and other close family members. But this discussion on motherhood changed my own perspective on motherhood because I thought this was going to be a conversation about children, and instead it is a conversation about the changes that mothers go through when they have children, the changes that adoptive and step parents go through when they have children in their lives, and what actually happens to us as women in those spaces. And Bayla's going to explain a term that I had never heard before called Matrescence. And that is what happens to women when they become mothers. And that is she describes it as a sort of identity crisis, but also as a further discovery and expression of the self. And so I'm really excited to have this discussion and have it bridge the totally inward-facing relationships we have and the totally outward-facing relationships we have. Because our children are our offspring. They come from us. And so our evolution into that space of caring for them is also going to evolve us on an emotional, a psychological, and, as we're learning, a biological level. So I'm really excited to share that with you today. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for being here, Bayla.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ambitious motherhood is one of the things you talk about on your podcast, and I know you do coaching and things on this topic. What qualifies you to talk about ambitious motherhood?
I am a mother, and I am a coach, a success coach for moms. I'm also a professor of literature and writing. I have a podcast. I'm an artist. I don't do art professionally, but I definitely take it very seriously. You know, one of the questions I've always gotten from friends and family is, how do you do all of these things? So that was something that really steered me in the direction that I went when I went into coaching. And I've always been very ambitious. I've always had very big dreams and very big goals. And when I became a mother, I went through a process called matrescence that all women go through, and that, I'm happy to speak more about. But basically, it is the biological, social, emotional, and psychological process that we go through when we become mothers and with each subsequent pregnancy. There are real biological changes that take place in the brain. There's a real shift in identity. And so what happened was motherhood really forced me to think about my ambitions, my goals, my dreams, and to think about my need and my want to be an amazing, connected, present mother, and to see how can I make this work in a way that I could be fulfilled in my motherhood and also fulfilled in my dreams.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's perfect for this audience. It's perfect for me. I've never actually heard that word before. Matrescence. Is that correct?
Matrescence.
That is really, really beautiful. Let's talk about you as a person and your story as an ambitious woman, and then how you have now applied that into your motherhood.
Yeah, so are you asking about matrescence itself, or about that moment when I realized, oh, something here is going on, something is changing, and what should I do?
Let's just talk about your story as a mother, and then we can bring in that word, that understanding, that framework that kind of described maybe what you were going through.
Sure. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened to me. So like I said, I've always been very ambitious. I graduated high school when I was 16. I started college. I had my master's degree at 22. I was teaching in college at 22. Very ambitious, very driven, very high achieving. And I really identified with that. At the same time, I've always wanted to be a mother. It's been very clear to me that I was going, with God's help, that I was going to be a mother. And that's been very important to me. So all along, even with all my ambitions and all my dreams, I've known that motherhood is important. And when I did get married, I was lucky to become a mother 9.5 months later. And everything happened very quickly. And I didn't expect, what I thought would happen was that I actually remember making a very snarky comment. I guess my aunt had told me, when you get married and you have children, it's not going to be like it is now. It's going to be a little different. You might be tired when you're pregnant and all of this. And I remember saying, well, I work 4 jobs now and I go to school. And so I'll do 2 jobs. What's the big deal? I got this. I could do this. And then I got pregnant and I was like, oh no, I do not have this. I don't know what I'm doing here, because my body changed. The way I responded, my energy levels, everything started to change. So it became really clear that no, this is not just, oh, I'll fit this in and everything will continue going like it is. That's kind of what I imagine in my mind is, okay, I'm going to become a mother. Okay, maybe I'll cut back a little bit. Maybe I'll do something, I'll cut back, but it'll be fine. I'll just fit it in, like compartmentalize my children.
And not only them in, it's fine.
Right? Because I think we don't think how dramatically we're going to change when we become a mother. So I didn't realize that there was this whole identity shift that was happening with matrescence. And how it played out for me was like this. On the outside, I was successful and I had all the things that I had wanted. I had the job as a professor that I always wanted. I had the husband that I always wanted. I had the child with my first child, and later I added on very quickly, but I had the child that I always wanted. And I had a home and everything looked right and seemed nice. And I wasn't depressed. I think that's also really important, because sometimes we need to make the distinction between PPD, postpartum depression, and matrescence. We all go through an identity shift. For some of us, we do really have postpartum depression and we do need to be treated for that and get therapy for that. And for others of us, we're going through that identity shift and we're starting to feel very ambivalent emotions. Like we're really excited, at the same time we're really frustrated. We love it, we hate it, we don't know what to do with it. And that's okay. That could be part of matrescence, right? So that's important, is to know the difference between PPD and just the normal changes that take place for any woman who's giving birth and having another child and adding to the family or starting her family. So for me, it was the success on the outside, and on the inside, I remember telling my husband, I remember saying to him, I'm not depressed. I'm actually happy. I love our child. I love you. I enjoy my job. But something just feels off. I just don't feel like myself. And I couldn't put my finger on it because I didn't know what matrescence was at the time. I didn't know that I was going through these shifts and that my brain was changing, literally on a biological level. Moms have more oxytocin receptors than women who haven't given birth, or even men. And they start to actually see the world differently, because what is oxytocin? It's the hormone of love and trust and connection and intimacy. So they start to see the world in terms of we instead of me, because they have those receptors to take in more of the oxytocin. They start to think in those terms. And so all of a sudden, I'm having this perspective change and this shift in how I view myself and how I view the world and how I view my role in the world. And I didn't know that was what was going on inside of me. At the same time, because I was looking to just move on with my life and maybe cut back a little bit, but mostly keep everything the same, I was trying to do it all, be it all, juggle it all. And what happens, this is what happens for most moms, is we cut out the things that are important to us. So for me, for example, I'm a very big creative. I love painting. I love learning new things. I like to take random courses, like jewelry making courses and coding courses. So all of that got cut out because everything else came first. My child, my husband, my home, my job, my career, right? And so I was slowly losing parts of myself and trying to fit myself back into the version of myself that I no longer was. And really, I needed to just embrace the expansion. Motherhood, I believe, is a calling into expanding into a greater potential. But if you're trying so hard to be who you were and to feel like you used to feel, you're never going to be able to expand into that potential.
That's so interesting. So you think it is a progression of your personhood rather than a total identity shift?
I think it is an identity shift that progresses your personhood forward.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's in a total, you're, changing yourself completely. The essence of who you are is still there, but it does do something to that identity. At the same time, it kind of moves you forward, and it uncovers and unlocks hidden talents and hidden passions that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, I've experienced all of that. I've had postpartum depression with with two children, and two I did not. But
Okay.
that shift, I can definitely identify parts of that in my own story. It's so interesting. So what did you do to, like, you already are this mother, you're already going through this process. Does that happen in birth? Is that the first 6 months? Like, how long does that process of change, chemical change, probably takes a lot of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, you should know that the study of matrescence is relatively new. It's a new field, and there's a lot of research currently being done. From what we know right now, matrescence happens and the biological changes take place with every birth. And actually, another interesting thing is also mothers who are adoptive mothers or stepmothers who don't actually birth a child, their brain will look the same as the brain of a biological mother. The only difference is it will take a longer amount of time for their brain to get there, but it will
So
eventually look
cool.
the same. Yeah, it's
So
amazing. It's
cool.
so amazing. So anyway, the amount of time is like this. They say the minimum amount of time is actually 2 years after giving birth, and the maximum amount of time, which is being debated, is up to your entire lifetime. There are
Oh
some
my
scholars who
gosh.
say your brain is actually continually changing until the end of your life based on
Wow.
motherhood.
Wow. That is, I mean, how validating for all of us mothers out there who feel like
Yeah.
we're just never done recuperating. Because we're never get back to that previous body, but we're not getting back to that previous mind either after our children are born. Where biology has given us different gifts and things to be mothers, and sometimes we shame ourselves for that, but it's also gifts. So what did you do to get to know this new self and honor those parts of you that were expanding?
Yeah, so I did quite a few things. First of all, I really didn't have the guidance. I didn't know what matrescence was, but I realized that something needed to change, and I started experimenting with things that I enjoyed again. I started trying to do that and bring those back into my life. I started being very conscious about who I wanted to be as a mother and as a woman, and how I wanted to show up in life when I'm interacting with my children, when I'm interacting at work, when I'm just walking down the street and, a stranger says hello, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And I started getting very intentional and conscious about that. And I developed, like this, I call it this life's mission statement. And most of the time we think of a mission as something you do, but I talk about it in terms of being, who do I want to be? And I'm always like tapping back into that. So that was something I started to go through this process where I became very intentional. And then and like I said, I started to experiment with things that I enjoyed. I started to experiment with deeper ways of connecting to myself and connecting to my children. So I experimented with something called positive or gentle parenting, and I decided that that's the parenting style I wanted to use with my children. Became very intentional about that. I became intentional about my home life, and I decided to get super organized. I became intentional about my career, and I decided which direction I wanted to take my career in. And along the way, of course, I was, like I said, very open and willing to experiment and to try, which is scary in the beginning. So, for example, I had been working in one position and one job, and I decided, this is not what I want to do anymore, and I made a shift. And that could be scary, but I trusted myself enough to do that. And one of the things that I talk about with clients and with women that I talk to is I learned something really important. And that is, I learned how to activate what I call the voice of the inner mother, the quintessential inner mother in all of us. And this is, I caught myself talking to myself in a way that was very critical and very pushy, like pushing my way to success in a way that I would never want to speak to my children. I remember asking myself, would you speak to your child like that? And I remember answering, no way. I would be horrified if that's how I reacted when my child told me they had this failure or made this mistake. And so I decided consciously that I am going to speak to myself in the voice of the inner mother. And who is that inner mother? That is the person that loves you more than anybody else, that believes in your potential more than anybody else, just like a mother does with her children, that supports you through every failure and every setback and every mistake and helps you to continue going forward. And that's who I decided to be for myself. And that was so uplifting and empowering and encouraging. And that really kind of gave me the wings to fly.
That's really beautiful. It sounds like you accessed reparenting yourself and that like unconditional love for self that all of us have for our children, like our higher self, that you can speak to yourself in that place. That's really beautiful. Okay, so you're accepting these parts of yourself, you're changing the way you speak to yourself, you're choosing gentle parenting, you're choosing with intention how you want your home to be, what you want your career to look like. How long did that process last for you? Are you a lifetime length person? Or are you a 2-year person?
I'm definitely a lifetime person. I'm always growing. I mean, I'm always growing. I'm always moving forward. I'm always changing. And I have steps back also. For me, that I would say the main parts of that process took, I'm trying to think between my first and my second, probably about 2 to 3 years till I really got comfortable and got into like a routine and a way of being that I was comfortable with, and kind of brought my circumstances up to that level too, of the situation that I wanted to be in. But it's always a work in progress. There's always more, there's always more reaching. And a person like me who is ambitious, I feel like we have that growth in us. And at the same time, I had to teach myself, like you said, to be accepting of the setbacks, to be accepting of when is not the time that I want to push forward in, a particular endeavor. And I'd rather focus on myself or my children. So I had to learn all that. But I do think that the main part of it took me about 3 years, I would say. And during that time, I had another baby. We added on to the family again. So it was like matrescence. I just kept going through it. It's like, it was a very intense process for me because my first two, my oldest two, are less than 2 years apart.
So interesting. With each pregnancy and birth, what things changed between child 1, child 2, child 2, child 3?
So between child 1, after child 1, I think realizing that something had to be different, and that moment, that realization moment, that awareness was like my catalyst and my awareness that something has to change, and I want to make intentional steps to to making a change. So that was the awareness step, the catalyst step. When I got pregnant with my second and I gave birth to him, there were some health issues in the pregnancy for me, and it was a little bit scary because I knew I wanted to have more children. And so there I made a very conscious change to focus on my physical health. And I lost 50 pounds. I went dairy and gluten-free. I changed my entire lifestyle around eating. And that was a very big catalyst in that for me. And it wasn't until my youngest, my baby, that pregnancy sort of gave me the confidence to go out there and start coaching. That's what I had wanted to do for a long time. I had a lot of people coming to me for coaching. I had students where I was working as a professor coming to me for mentorship and coaching, and I would constantly be doing it unofficially, but I never had the confidence to go out there and say, I'm a coach. And it was with that pregnancy, it's like things just, when I started the whole matrescence. I started learning about matrescence, and it was kind of like I felt like there was a lot of healing going on between baby 1 and 2. And baby 3 was kind of like, we're going to go into the thrive stage and we're just going to expand and step into more potential. So I feel like, the first 2 is kind of like pause, heal, take a few deep breaths, figure out what's happening to you. And the third baby, it was like, this is it, go for it.
So that is really interesting because each of those 3 stages you just talked about, each of your 3 children's, the catalyst that they were for you, those are the 3 stages that I have found are patterns with ambitious women. They recognize a need to change or who they are. They go through a really fun experimental stage, and then they pick something or some things to focus on and really dive deep down into action. So I love that each of your pregnancies and births kind of birthed you into that next step in embracing who you are and becoming more of yourself. That's really cool.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that you recognize that pattern in ambitious women. That's
It's
amazing.
it's been really amazing. I've talked to so many different women now from all over the place, and all different kinds of circumstances, and this is a pattern that we all have, and it's a coming to know ourselves, and it's beautiful. And I love the story that you're telling and what you have to contribute right now. Right now, our segment on the podcast is ambitious relationships. And last week's episode was ambitious relationships with the self. And we are moving into ambitious relationships with children. But what I love what you're sharing here is it's both. It's motherhood, which is the self when you are a mother. And then it allows you to show up for your family and your loved ones in a way that's really intentional, and it's what you choose, and you're not abandoning yourself in order to do that. So I love that that's kind of, we're making that transition from the self to our next most important people in our lives.
What I have learned and noticed for myself is that it's not in spite of motherhood, but it's because of motherhood that I'm more personally and professionally successful. Because a lot of women think I'm going to be successful, whatever that means to them, right? In spite of motherhood. No, it's actually because of motherhood. That has been what has been true for me. And I think for many women, that can be true. And it's just digging in and recognizing it and having the mindset to get there and to understand it and to understand yourself and embrace and expand. Now, as far as my relationship with my children, I'll tell you like this. The first time my oldest two, they're very close in age. And the first time I remember one of them hit the other one. And they were young, I don't know, 1.5 and whatever, 2, 1.5. And I remember catching myself, like the first reaction was to yell, "Don't do that." And to be like really defensive and protective of the one that was being hit. And then I caught myself and I said, wait a second. No, I don't want to yell at my children. I'm not going to yell at them. And I shouldn't be defending one child over the other. So what am I supposed to do in this situation? Because I really didn't know. I really didn't know what to do. And that started an entire journey into researching different parenting methods, discipline, and all of that. And I found positive parenting. I actually found Dr. Laura Markham, who I love, and I found her first. And then I found gentle parenting. And from that moment, I decided this is how I'm going to raise my children. And it was actually a lot of the work that I did in my parenting, I used then on myself, like a lot of the emotional processing work, a lot of guiding and coaching your children in how to process their emotions, a lot of, allowing for negative emotions, but not negative behavior, right? Or undesirable emotions, but not undesirable behavior. And I started to do that work on myself. And then that really got me into also that's in the coaching space, right? And so really my parenting evolved. I mean, from my first child, I realized very early on that I didn't want to parent the way that I just knew how. I wanted to be intentional about it. And of course, it has still evolved since then. There's so much, after I became a coach and I had done so much emotional work for myself and for other women, and that has obviously tremendously impacted my patience level, how I react with my children, how I see emotions being processed, how I understand the difference between a situation, a thought, a behavior, and all of those components. So I feel like it just keeps getting better.
I love those examples. Are there other gifts of motherhood that you've seen with clients that maybe we can rethink the way we think about ourselves and give ourselves some credit for all the work that we are doing as mothers and how that
Yeah,
can apply to our careers?
for sure. So I do an exercise I called the Motherhood Manual with all of my clients. And basically what it is there's this concept that we all have a subconscious manual for how we should be, how others should treat us, how we should be as mothers, how we should show up as wives, how we should show up in the world. And really, we've gotten these ideas usually from our families of origin, from our culture and our society and the community that we grew up in, from, just general societal expectations and norms. And we've kind of just taken them as our own. But a lot of times they don't necessarily work for us. And a lot of these are should statements, like, I should be perfect as a mother. I should never raise my voice. I should be able to balance a 40-hour work week and motherhood. All of these things. So basically, I have my clients write out all of their should statements, how they think they should be as a mother, how they think they should be as a wife if they're, if they have a spouse, how they think they should be in their career, how they think they, should I send my child to daycare? Should I not send my child to daycare? There's a lot of like drama about that, right? So we write out all the should statements. And then what we do is we go back and we consciously decide, do I like this? Does this ring true for me? And do I want to keep it? And if I don't, we cross it out. And if I do, we keep it. And if I want to change it, I change it. If I want to add something, I add something. But we make our own conscious, way of being in motherhood and in life, rather than what happens is we take all of these things that we kind of, these things that are other people's values that are not ours, and then we feel guilty when we don't live up to them. So rather than carrying that mom guilt and that mom shame, we get very, very intentional about it.
I love that. And then you just grow as a person and you can show up more completely in other areas of your life as well.
Well, 100%, because the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. That's sort of like my motto that I go by. And it's really interesting to see, because when I elevated, for example, my health journey, and I did all that work on my physical body and on my eating, my lifestyle when it comes to food, that propelled me forward. Like each step I took in that helped me, then when it came to my business, it was the same really mindset that I needed to make that health food journey, right? So how we do one thing is how we do everything. And when we focus on one part of our life, for parenting, our health, our business endeavors, it is just going to up level every other area of our lives, besides the fact that we're going to feel much better. And so, most likely, there's times you're, of course, uncomfortable. There's times you go through pain, all of that. But in general, we feel like we're on the right track. We feel like we're fulfilled. And so that spills out into every area of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. And in my study of ambition, that is a personality trait that's exhibited throughout our whole life. And so you're ambitious with your health, you're ambitious with your relationships and your career and like your personal development and your growth. And I love seeing that through your eyes and through your story, because it's the story of so many of us. And that can be really, really overwhelming, but it's also really empowering when we can tap into that and be intentional with it and actually decide, what values am I choosing to carry throughout my life. So for mothers who maybe have not processed and been as intentional as you as early on, like for me, my oldest is 10 years old. Is there a time limit for women to understand that part of themselves, or is this work that we can do at any stage?
So that's a really great question, because I have a lot of women I coach that have older children, and they're like, oh, I wish I knew about this when my child was 1 or 2 or 3 years old. But the truth is, it's just like life. It's never too late. Just like with life, matrescence, it's never too late. And according to many opinions, your brain is still changing on a biological level. But even if it's not, there's the emotional changes, there's the psychological changes, there's the social changes. And if you've never really sat down and been intentional about that, then you always have the opportunity to go ahead and to do that. You're a mother and you're a woman in the world, and now you've decided that this is the time. And I also believe very strongly, a lot of times I've been asked if you could say you can give one tip, what would you say? And I say, please learn how to forgive yourself and how to love yourself unconditionally. Because 2 things. One is that's going to be the greatest gift you could ever give to your children. They're going to grow up with a mother who knows how to forgive herself, and they're going to become children who know how to forgive themselves and love themselves unconditionally. And one of the strongest points of connection I have with my children is apologizing to them when I make a mistake and it hurts them or it impacts them, right? If mommy raised her voice, or she said something she didn't like, or she changed her mind about how she handled a situation, I know that I turn around to my children and I say, I'm sorry. Mommy's a human being. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I love you no matter what. And so I think that is so powerful, that act of forgiveness, and to be able to forgive ourselves and to move forward. And I also believe that certain things come into our life for certain reasons at certain times. I believe in divine timing. And I believe that wherever you are in your journey, if this is when you found matrescence and this is when you made the decision to change your life and to be more intentional, then this is the exact right time that you needed. I believe that we are the perfect mother for our children, and our children are the perfect children for us, with all of their flaws and with all of our flaws. And so I'm a spiritual person, I'm a God-oriented person, and I say, God knew me with all my flaws, when he was going to give me those children, and when I was going to find matrescence. And this is exactly what we both need.
I love that. Thank you. That's just like, okay, I'm good where I am, and we're going to grow from here. And that's
Right.
really, really beautiful.
Success is getting the results that you want in the way that you want them, in the way that works for you. So I feel like this is a different definition of success, because usually we focus on that first part of getting the results that we want in our life, whatever those results are, right? And so we'll do anything to get there. Many times we ignore our own needs. We'll bully ourselves with our inner voice. We'll let go of all our priorities to get to that definition of success. That part of the success equation is getting those results, whether that's a career change, whether that's losing weight, whatever it is. But it's that second part of how I define success, and that is in a way that works for you, that I think is so important, and that we as mothers need so badly. Because many times moms feel like they're being pulled in so many different directions, especially if you're an ambitious mother. You want to be an amazing mother, and you want to be an amazing wife, and you want to have an amazing home, and you want to have an amazing career, and you have other dreams that you want to pursue, and maybe you want to write a novel, whatever it is, right? And so you have all these things you want to do. You feel pulled in a lot of different directions. And so that's where that like kind of pushing, and I need to do what I need to do to get to success. But it's that second part of the equation. I say success without self-love is failure. Don't be fooled. If we're not getting success in a way that works for us, in a way that includes self-love, it's not success.
Love that. I totally agree. And I think we can do that as ambitious, as humans who are ambitious. We can be so focused on the end result, and then we think that's going to make us happy. And it's not, if we are losing everything else on the path to getting that trophy at the end. And it's not going to bring us true joy.
Right. And that's another big lesson that motherhood taught me, is I was very success oriented. I was very goal oriented. It was all about meeting my goal. It was all about that first part of the equation, that getting those results. And when I became a mother, motherhood is about being in the process. That's literally what it's about. I mean, pregnancy is about being in that process, sticking out that process, no matter how uncomfortable it is, right? And learning how to enjoy that process, because sometimes there is pain in pregnancy, and there is discomfort, and sometimes there are health complications, whatever it is. And learning how to believe and enjoy, believe through the process, enjoy the process. And so motherhood really gave that to me. It taught me more of the feminine side, what I would call like the feminine side of success, which is more being in the process, how to appreciate that more, because I was very much in that, what I call the masculine side, which is that very just get to the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that application, because our bodies go through so many changes, and we're constantly evolving, and we have hormonal, and men are very, not stagnant, but their biology doesn't change nearly the way ours does. So that's a very interesting way to look at that, and how it might be a little more natural. I know from my own process, I have to kind of honor the ebbs and flows of my creativity and of my interests, and instead of just like pushing towards the end. And when I can honor those ebbs and flows and changes, that's what gives my creativity momentum, and that's where I get to take breaks and then be inspired. And I don't know, it's a natural state of being, and maybe it's because I'm a woman, and that's part of my biology and part of my process.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because a lot of our examples of success come from men, and I
It's
think
true.
that women are wired differently for success. And like you're saying, it's built into our biology. We experience success in different ways. And part of that is appreciating the process, being in the process, and sometimes not having that end goal be the be all, the end all. Whereas most of our figures and models for success typically have been men throughout the ages.
Yeah, so let's rewrite that. We need more strong women like you speaking up. So thank you so much for using your voice and rewriting the script for what success looks like and what the process can look like. Because I don't know any woman who's ambitious. I don't know any mother who's only doing one thing and striving for one goal. We're all doing lots of things, and on our attention, we have to shift it between things and distribute our energy and juggling. We're doing lots of things all at once to make it happen for us, and like being really intentional with which balls we pick up and how far we throw them, and making sure you're not like, I find myself juggling other people's balls sometimes, other people's values, other people's shoulds. And so, examining where am I actually spending my time and my energy, and what's actually feeding me and my family and who I want to be. And then you can drop a bunch of those things that don't matter. There's a great book called Drop the Ball that goes into that analogy a little bit more. Okay, so for those women who have not had children yet, who would like to prepare for this change in their life, the matrescence, is there anything they can do before they get pregnant or while they're pregnant to help?
Yes, so I think that this is really important because not enough people know about matrescence, but there is a movement, that I'm a part of as a matrescence educator and as a coach who coaches on this. There is a movement to bring that awareness, not just to women, by the way, but to men as well. Men want to know what their wives are going through, what, the people they love are going through, and they really need to know. So I would say the first step is to really get educated on matrescence. Now, it is difficult because like I said, there's not a lot of researchers on this yet. There is a scholar in the field, Dr. Arlie Athens, but she is more of, let's say an academic. You are welcome. I have a podcast where I talk about matrescence. I actually have a specific episode. I believe it's episode 4. I talk about how our brains prepare for our babies just like our bodies do. But getting educated on what matrescence is, knowing what to expect, what is going to happen, how you're going to feel, knowing that there's going to be ambivalent emotions, knowing that you may start liking things you didn't like before, or not enjoying the things and not prioritizing the things you used to prioritize, knowing that there might be a change in your timeline for your goals because you've decided you want to focus on motherhood for a little while, and being able to figure out, like, how am I going to feel about that, right? I might be a little bit, there might be some shame and things that I want to work through and deal with, or guilt, whatever it is. Being educated about how you're going to go through these changes about matrescence is the first step. But the second step, which is really just as important, is understanding that just like when you take a birth class and they prepare you, okay, here's what's going to happen, and they kind of walk you through every step of the labor. Until you're actually in it, it's just not the same. You could be as prepared as you want to be, but until you're in it, it's a whole new story, right? And so let's educate ourselves. Let's not go in, just like we wouldn't want to go into labor not knowing anything that's going to happen. Let's not go into it uneducated, but at the same time, let's be aware that it may feel a little different for us, and that until we experience it, we won't really fully understand it.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Is there anything else you want to leave us before we close?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for doing this work as well in the world, and for rewriting these stories and giving examples of, the feminine version of success, right? And I just want to say that it's always available to you, no matter where you are in life, no matter how old you are, if your kids are out of the house, if your kids are 2, if you're pregnant with your first, no matter where you are in life, it's available to you. All you have to do is decide.
That's beautiful. Thank you. If people want to work with you more, where should they come find you?
Okay, so you could find me at Coach Bayla, that's BAYLA.com. You can also listen to my podcast. It's called Awaken to You for Moms, and that's across all the platforms. But you can go ahead and find me at my website and across social media at Coach Bayla.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. This has been an episode of the Women of Ambition podcast. I love what Bayla has shared with us today. It's going to segment so well into next week's discussion with Meg about ambitious relationship with kids. And spoiler alert, she has brought her kids on a mega RV road trip across the United States, which is very close to my heart, and I'm so excited to share her story. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you would like to leave a comment or review, we are the Women of Ambition podcast everywhere, iTunes, www.womenofambitionpodcast.com, and on Instagram. Thanks so much for listening.